Well, I suppose for me it was the Daleks, really. I didn't really feel I was a true doctor till I worked with the Daleks. And, what was really interesting was that that story I did, Remembrance of the Daleks, was the first time they'd ever been seen to levitate upstairs. And that was fascinating to watch how they did it. I mean, nowadays you just press a button and they go. Then what they did was, they got a Dalek, and they didn't actually get a lightweight Dalek, they got one of their big heavy Daleks, and they stuck into its side 2 scaffolding poles. And then through the wall, and there's another scaffolding pole going parallel to the stairs, and they put those over that scaffolding pole, and then they got 10 men on the other side. And they lifted the Dalek up, and they pushed it up, and the Dalek was going up the stairs like this, all the way. By the time it got to the top of it, it threw up. I mean, it was just... it was quite extraordinary. I mean, they couldn't get a cardboard one, or no, let's, do it the heavy way. So
and they took over the universe.
They took over the universe. And it's the Dalek and 10 men each.
Hi.
So I was wondering if you could make your own episode of Doctor Who. Who would the companions be? Who would the monsters be? And what would happen?
Listen, people get paid millions to write that. Well, the BBC, not so many. That's a very difficult, isn't it?
Well, yes, I mean, you mean of the companions there have been, do you mean? The kind of companions there have been? Any companions?
Well, you go for Matthew, wouldn't you?
No, Matthew's dead. I get into such trouble about killing off Matthew. I tell you who my favourite companion was, and if I got time just to tell you a little thing about Matthew as well. When my children were growing up, the Doctor Who came back, and the first companion was Rose, obviously, and when it was getting towards the end of the time, I think there was an episode called The Day I Died, or something like that, The Day Rose Died, and I was terribly worried about my children watching it, if she was going to die, because they were terribly attached to Rose, they just loved the character. And so I sent an email to Russell T Davies saying look, Russell, just could you, I know you don't give anything away, I won't tell anyone, but could you just tell me, does Rose die in the episode next week? Because if she does, I don't think I should let my children watch it. I want to pre-warn them. And Russell, of course, had grown up.
I thought you would send the telegram and say, if she does die, could you make sure she doesn't, because my children are watching.
Too late for that. But Russell, of course, had grown up. I'd forgotten watching Doctor Who during the classic Doctor's time, and he sent an email back to me saying, "You killed Adric. What do you care?" In answer to your question, I would choose Rose as my companion because I think she was.
Agree in a way, because I mean, Ace was marvellous, and is marvellous. There was always an imperfection and it was nothing to do with Sophie, it was to do with the producer. They wouldn't allow Sophie to speak with a street, cred accent, because they were worried about the American audience, and that's why they wouldn't. So there was always, you always felt, I wish Ace was a bit more, talking. And then when Rose came along, I thought, that's Ace. 100%. She's arrived. This is what we want to do, And Sophie feels the same. If only she could have been allowed to be, and so that's why Rose is the kind of perfection.
The most recent season of Doctor Who saw reboots of 2 classic villains, the Ice Warriors and the Great Intelligence. What are your opinions of their return, and what features, what villains or monsters from the past would you like to see get on to be
I'd like to see them all get a reboot, really, because I think they were kind of needed. I think they need to be sort of redone with advanced special effects, rather than some of the things we had to make do with. I mean, not necessarily change them massively, just sort of update them. So I'd like them to trawl through whatever aliens and monsters we had from our time and reboot quite a few of them.
The Zarbi from the Willie Hartnell era, the alien-like creatures in the Hartnell era.
Right.
You remember the Web Planet?
Yes. Very vaguely.
Omega, the Ronnie, the Toy Maker.
Yes.
And of course, that was one of the toy era story. It's a curse of memory.
Yeah, no, I like that as well. I mean, I thought the Tet Traps were my first monsters. I think they should be brought back because they were quite fascinating and they could make them fly now. It was really sad because, well, not sad, it was torturous for the actors who had to play the Tet Traps. Tet Traps, for those who didn't know, were bats with 3 eyes, and lots of teeth, and lots of ears, and things like that. And they used to hang upside down, and there were actually actors in that, hanging upside down in the studio, in the heat, and used to act underneath them, and it dripped on top of you of their sweat. And I always thought, wow, what a shame that they didn't, nowadays they couldn't really just fly all over the place.
It was like the pteroleptors, the pteroleptors I mentioned earlier. They had the faces here, they put on black makeup so you couldn't see their eyes through the costume, but they could see. And when they took the costumes off, the dye, the makeup would drip all the way down their bodies to their socks.
Yes.
It was so hard. It was very, very difficult to play things in those costumes. So we could all do with a few digital effects nowadays.
Peter's panel, he asked the same question I asked him to Sylvester. How many companions did you have, and which one was your favorite robot?
Well, I only... Could you hear this question? I only had 2 companions. I love them both. They were totally different in every way, and that was the joy of working with them, and they were totally wonderful, and they still are.
I have one for each of you. First one's for Sylvester. I was wondering, the last episode of Doctor Who is not Smith right now. How did you think of it? Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it. No, it aired when I was in New Zealand filming.
The Hobbit.
And so I actually missed it. Then when I got back, it aired in New Zealand, but I'd left by then. So I kept hearing bits and bobs about it. But they used scenes, did they, of us?
I think there's a little scene in it. Yes. What did you think of it? You thought it was fantastic, great. And I'll look forward to watching it because I haven't seen it. Okay.
Is that celebrating?
Yeah. Is that here? Yes. Probably fake. You think this is fake celery? This is real crochet celery.
Okay, so the Doctor is someone that we all know and love, but to you guys, besides yourselves, who is your favorite incarnation?
Well, for political reasons and my personal safety, I'm going to leave David Tennant out of this equation. My favourite was Patrick Troughton, because I grew up with Patrick Troughton. I I just thought in a way, he had the hardest job because he was the first regeneration, and no one knew anything about him or thought anything about regenerations, and yet he managed to win the hearts of the audience, I think, inside one episode, and seemingly just became the Doctor. He was kind of my Doctor. That was my time with Doctor Who. William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton, but Patrick Troughton, I think, is my favourite. I do think David Tennant did a fantastic job as well.
Yeah, Patrick Troughton was my very first Doctor I ever saw, and I, thought he was amazing as well. And I concur with him. Taking over. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be sitting here today celebrating 50 years of Doctor Who. But lots of other people.
Hi, thank you both so much for being here. I had a question for Mr. Davison. In Time Crash, you got back in TARDIS with David Tennant, and I was wondering what was it like to be back in TARDIS and back in the costume after so long and working with a more recent Doctor?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Well, overall, it was a fantastic experience. The costume didn't fit quite as well as it had done around before, as was indeed pointed out by Mr. Tennant. Yes, he was very rude to me at that time. At that time,
And you still allowed him to marry your daughter.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, he wasn't part of my family, so he could get away with it. But it was nothing. It was a very new experience because by this time they filmed it in Cardiff in what they call a standing set. In our day, they would just wheel the set in and out of the studio, and therefore it was a kind of rather brightly and overlit set, and was on the sort of basic studio floor. By the time that I filmed Time Crash, it was a fantastic set, really, because it was there all the time. So it didn't feel like coming home exactly, but nevertheless, it was very friendly. In fact, my Time Crash was directed by Graham Harper, who directed Caves of Androzani, in my last story. So for me, it was perfect continuity. But overall, it was a great thrill to do it, really, because I suppose it was the first time that the classic series and the new series had been connected, albeit sort of children in need special. It was great.
Okay, so this is for Peter Davidson. So your doctor always has a fresh stalk of celery on his jacket. So is there a celery plant on the TARDIS?
Well,
I can tell you there is, because when I got there, it had rotted and it smelled like fire.
I was going to say that every night I would put the celery in its own little time machine and send it back 24 hours. And so the next morning I would get out the same piece and get strangely fresh. Actually, it wasn't a real stick of celery, of course. I think that's going to destroy the illusion for you. I'm very sorry about that.
He's a vegetarian.
And the other thing is I didn't like celery. I don't mind wearing it on my lapel, that's fine. But for me, this crocheted celery would taste nicer.